Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. And I want you to be me, Sam, to become me at any cost. The words hung in the sterile air of Ellie's bedroom, a space that used to smell like chalk dust and victory but now carried the faint, cloying scent of antiseptic and stale flowers. I stared at my sister, my twin, her body swallowed by the bulk of a high-tech wheelchair. Her brilliant blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that was both terrifying and heartbreaking. It was a look of absolute desperation, a plea wrapped in the steel of a command. "What are you talking about?" Elle, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The medication? Are you feeling okay?" She shook her head, a gesture so sharp it seemed to rattle her frail frame. "Don't treat me like I'm crazy, Sam. I've never been more clear about anything in my life." It had been 3 months since the accident, 3 months since a distracted driver had plowed through an intersection, turning Ellie's car into a mangled wreck and her dreams into dust. The doctors had saved her life, but they couldn't save her career. Multiple fractures, nerve damage, the litany of injuries was a death sentence for a gymnast who had been on the verge of qualifying for the national championships. Her life's work, our family's shared dream, was gone. In its place was this hollowed-out version of my sister. The fire in her eyes had been reduced to a pilot light, flickering weakly against a storm of despair. She barely spoke, barely ate. She just sat in this room, surrounded by trophies and medals that now seemed to mock her. "I'm not calling you crazy," I said gently, pulling up a stool to sit beside her. I don't understand." She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the high-tech brace on her leg. "The championships are in 3 months. I can't compete. My spot will go to someone else. Everything I've worked for since I was 4 years old. It's just over." Her voice cracked on the last word, a sound that sliced right through me. "I know," I said, my own throat tight. I hate it. I hate it more than anything." "But it doesn't have to be," she said, her eyes locking back onto mine. "It doesn't have to be over. I can still compete." I blinked, completely lost. "Ellie, you can't even stand on your own." "I can't," she agreed, a strange feverish light coming into her eyes. "But my body can, my exact body." She gestured toward a locked case under her bed. "Mom and Dad don't know I have this. I took it from Dad's lab before he shut the project down." My blood went cold. Our father was a brilliant but eccentric geneticist who had worked for a private research firm. He'd once been obsessed with a project he called cellular mimicry, a wild theory about using a catalyst serum to temporarily rewrite a person's genetic expression based on a donor sample. It was supposed to be a revolutionary medical tool for things like skin grafts or organ regeneration. The project was deemed too unstable and defunded years ago. I thought it was all just theory. "You stole an experimental genetic compound?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "I borrowed it," she corrected impatiently. "It works, Sam. I tested it on a lab mouse. It can temporarily reshape a subject's body into a perfect physical duplicate of a donor. It copies everything: height, muscle mass, bone structure, even vocal cords. It lasts for about 12 hours. I stood up, backing away. This was insane. No way. You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," she said, her voice dropping, becoming dangerously persuasive. "We're twins. Our base genetics are already almost identical. The process would be stable, safe. You're the only person in the world who could do this. You could take the serum, use my DNA, and become me." The room felt like it was shrinking. The air was thick, hard to breathe. The idea was so monstrous, so fundamentally wrong, that my mind couldn't even fully process it. Me become Ellie. I was a 16-year-old boy. I liked video games and junk food. I was lanky and awkward, with none of her grace or athletic prowess. The idea of inhabiting her body, of wearing a leotard and performing on a mat, it was a violation. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice shaking. "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's twisted, Ellie." "What's twisted is letting my dream die because of a stupid accident," she shot back, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair so tightly her knuckles were white. "This is my one shot, Sam, my only shot. Do you have any idea what this feels like to have everything you are, everything you've ever worked for, ripped away from you? I watch videos of my old routines and I feel like a ghost. But this isn't the answer, I insisted. It's lying. It's cheating. It's grotesque. The word hit her like a slap. Her face crumpled, the fierce determination dissolving into raw, unfiltered pain. Tears began to well in her eyes, spilling down her pale cheeks. It wasn't loud, dramatic sobbing. It was a silent, broken weeping that was 1,000 times worse. "Please," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "Sammy, please, you're the only one who can save me. You're the only person who can give me my life back. If you don't do this for me, then I have nothing left, nothing." Her eyes, swimming in tears, held me captive. It was the same look she'd given me when we were 7, and she'd begged me to take the blame for breaking Mom's favorite vase. The same look she'd used when she needed me to do her math homework so she could get an extra hour of practice at the gym. It was a look that had always been my weakness. My protest died in my throat. My anger and fear were still there, swirling in my gut like a toxic cocktail. But they were being drowned by the overwhelming tide of my love for her. Seeing her so completely shattered was a physical pain in my own chest. The idea of transforming into her was terrifying, but the thought of leaving her in this black hole of despair was unbearable. I sank back onto the stool, my shoulders slumping in defeat. I wasn't agreeing because I thought it was a good idea. I was agreeing because I couldn't say no. "Okay," I breathed, the word feeling like a surrender. "Okay, I'll try it, just once, just to see." It was meant to appease her, to make her feel better for a day. I didn't believe it would work, and even if it did, I had no intention of going through with the competition. But as a slow, watery smile spread across her face, the first real smile I'd seen in 3 months, a dreadful certainty settled in my stomach. I hadn't just agreed to try, I had agreed to everything. The next evening, my parents went out for a rare dinner, leaving the house quiet and filled with a tense, expectant energy. Ellie wheeled herself into the center of her room, the small locked case now sitting open on her lap. Inside, nestled in sterile foam, were 2 vials of clear liquid, a syringe, and a small scanner. It all looked terrifyingly professional. "Give me your hand," she said, her voice all business. She was back in her element, focused, determined, in control. I hesitated, then held out my hand. She took a single strand of her own long, blonde hair from her brush and placed it on the scanner's plate. A small light glowed. Then, she pricked my finger with a tiny lancet, squeezing a single drop of my blood onto the same plate. "The serum needs a donor sample to map the target genome, and a host sample to identify what needs to be changed," she explained, her fingers moving deftly as she drew the liquid from one vial into the syringe. "The catalyst in the second vial will activate the process. It rewrites your ephemeral biology, cell structure, hormonal balance, tissue density. It's all temporary. Your core DNA remains unchanged. In 12 hours, your cell's natural memory will trigger a reversion. Dad's notes said it was perfectly safe." Perfectly safe for a lab rat. Maybe, I muttered, watching the needle with a growing sense of dread. She ignored me. Injecting the contents of the syringe into the second vial, she swirled it gently, the clear liquid turning a faint, pearlescent blue. "Okay, it's ready. You need to take off your clothes, all of them." "What? Why?" "The transformation involves significant changes in bone structure and mass. Clothing would just get in the way, or be destroyed, and you need to lie on the floor mat. The first few minutes can be disorienting." My heart hammered against my ribs. Stripping naked to be injected with a mad science serum felt like the beginning of a horror movie. But I had promised. Gritting my teeth, I peeled off my t-shirt and jeans, leaving them in a heap on the floor. I stood there in my boxers, feeling utterly exposed and foolish. "All of it, Sam," she insisted, her gaze unwavering. With a final resigned sigh, I slid off my boxers and quickly lay down on the soft gymnastics mat in the middle of her room, crossing my arms over my chest. The air felt cold on my bare skin. Ellie wheeled closer, the syringe in her hand. "This might feel a little strange," she said, her voice softer now, perhaps sensing my fear. "Just try to relax and breathe." I closed my eyes, unable to watch. I felt the cold dab of an alcohol swab on my bicep, followed by a sharp pinch as the needle went in. She pushed the plunger, and a cold sensation spread through my arm, moving rapidly toward my chest. For a moment, nothing happened. I opened my eyes, about to say that it was a dud, that this whole thing was a stupid fantasy. Then it started. It began as a deep, humming vibration in my bones, a bizarre tingling sensation that made every nerve ending in my body feel like it was waking up. A wave of warmth washed over me, a dizzying heat that felt like a fever. I gasped, my muscles contracting involuntarily. It didn't hurt, not exactly, but the feeling was so profoundly alien that panic began to set in. "It's working," Ellie whispered, her voice filled with awe. I could feel it, a strange, pulling sensation in my torso. My shoulders felt like they were narrowing, cinching inward, while a dull ache bloomed in my hips. A pressure that was both uncomfortable and strangely satisfying. It felt as if my entire skeleton was being gently softened and reshaped like warm clay. My skin prickled and tightened. A pins and needles feeling that swept from my feet to my scalp. I felt a sudden lightness in my limbs, as if my dense muscle was melting away, replaced by something sleeker, more compact. The most unnerving sensation was in my chest. A tender, aching sensitivity began to spread across my pecs. I could feel the tissue swelling, pushing outward. I brought a trembling hand up to my chest and my fingers brushed against a soft, unfamiliar mound. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. My breathing became shallow, my Adam's apple seeming to dissolve in my throat, smoothing the line of my neck. I felt a strange shift in my center of gravity, a weight settling lower in my body. The change was happening faster now. A heavy, flowing sensation cascaded from my scalp as my short brown hair lengthened at an impossible rate, spilling over my shoulders, the color lightening to a familiar shade of honey blonde. The whole process took maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When the sensations finally subsided, I was left lying on the mat, breathing heavily, my body feeling completely foreign. It felt smaller, softer, and humming with a strange new energy. Sam Ellie's voice was hesitant. "Are you okay?" I pushed myself up into a sitting position. My movements felt different, smoother, more fluid. The long blonde hair fell into my face, and I instinctively brushed it aside. My hands were smaller, my fingers more slender. I looked down at myself. I saw a smooth, pale torso with a narrow waist that flared out into gracefully curved hips. I saw 2 small, perfectly formed breasts and long, toned legs. My body was completely hairless, the skin soft and flawless. It was the body of an athlete. It was the body of a girl. "The mirror," Ellie breathed, pointing toward the full-length mirror on her closet door. My legs felt unsteady as I stood up, like a foal taking its first steps. The balance was all wrong, or rather, all new. I walked slowly, awkwardly toward the mirror, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my new, smaller ribcage. I was terrified of what I was going to see. I stopped in front of the glass and looked, and my breath hitched in my throat. The person staring back at me was not a stranger. The person staring back at me was Ellie, not the broken Ellie in the wheelchair, but the Ellie from before the accident. The same heart-shaped face, the same determined chin, the same wide, intelligent blue eyes. My eyes, her eyes. My face was her face. The body I was inhabiting was a perfect, healthy, vibrant replica of my sister. I raised a hand, and my reflection did the same. I touched my cheek, the skin unbelievably soft. I ran my fingers through the long blonde hair. It was real. This was real. I was looking at myself, but I was seeing my twin sister. The boy named Sam was gone, erased, replaced by this perfect female form. The shock was so profound. It left no room for any other emotion. I just stood there, mute, staring at the impossible reflection. Ellie wheeled up behind me, her own reflection appearing next to mine in the mirror. She looked at the image of her healthy self, then at her own broken body in the chair. A single perfect tear traced a path down her cheek. "It worked," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's you. It's me." She reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool. Mine was warm. It was the strangest sensation, holding the hand of your own duplicate. I finally found my voice, but it wasn't my voice. A higher, clearer, more melodic sound came out. "Ellie?" "It's perfect," she said, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of joy and triumph. She looked me up and down, a coach assessing her star pupil. Her gaze was clinical, but I felt a blush spread across my new cheeks. She turned and wheeled over to her dresser, pulling something from the top drawer. It was a flash of dark, shimmering fabric. She held it up, a gymnast's leotard. "Okay," she said, her voice now sharp and focused. "The emotional moment over. Time for the real work to begin. If you're going to train, you need to be dressed for it." I stood frozen in front of the mirror, the leotard dangling from Ellie's hand like a challenge. My mind was still reeling from the shock of the transformation. One part of me was screaming in panic, a primal terror at the loss of my own body. Another, smaller part was paralyzed by a strange, detached curiosity. But the part of me that was in charge right now was the part that was utterly, profoundly embarrassed. I was standing completely naked in a body that wasn't mine, and my sister was about to ask me to put on what was essentially a woman's swimsuit. "Come on," she prodded, holding it out to me. "We don't have all night. The serum only lasts for 12 hours. Remember, we need to see what you can do." I took the garment from her. The fabric was a deep sapphire blue, made of a slick, stretchy material that felt cool and synthetic against my fingertips. It was incredibly small, looking more like something for a doll than a person. I don't know how to put this on," I stammered, my new voice sounding shy and uncertain even to my own ears. Ellie sighed, a flicker of impatience crossing her face. "It's not rocket science. Step into it, pull it up like a one-piece bathing suit." My cheeks burned. I had never worn a one-piece bathing suit. I turned my back to her, hoping to preserve some shred of dignity, and awkwardly tried to follow her instructions. I stepped through the leg holes, the fabric cool and tight against my thighs. The sensation was immediately jarring. I was used to the loose feel of boxers, the freedom of movement. This was the opposite. This was compression. I pulled the leotard up over my hips. It clung to every curve, outlining the new shape of my body with unforgiving accuracy. The high-cut leg openings felt scandalously revealing, exposing the pale skin at the top of my thighs. As I worked the material up my torso, it stretched taut over my stomach and cinched my waist. The final and most mortifying step was pulling the straps over my shoulders. As I did, the fabric flattened against my chest, cupping and lifting my small breasts, making their presence impossible to ignore. I could feel the soft, sensitive flesh pressing against the tight spandex. The neckline was a modest scoop, but the back was cut low, leaving a large diamond of my skin exposed. I felt incredibly bare, more naked than when I had actually been naked. Every line, every curve of my female form was on full display. I stood there with my back to her, my arms crossed protectively over my chest, unable to move. The physical sensations were overwhelming. The way the elastic dug slightly into my shoulders and hips, the seamless hug of the fabric against my skin, the unfamiliar feeling of being both contained and exposed. "Turn around. Let me see," Ellie commanded. Slowly, reluctantly, I turned to face her. I couldn't meet her eyes. Instead, fixing my gaze on a spot on the carpet, I felt her clinical eyes sweep over me, and the blush on my cheeks deepen to a fiery crimson. "It fits perfectly," she said with satisfaction. "Of course it does. You're my exact size." She wheeled closer and, to my horror, reached out and adjusted one of the straps on my shoulder, her fingers brushing against my bare skin. I flinched, my whole body tensing up. "Relax," she said, her tone softening slightly. "It's just a leotard. It's my uniform. Now it's yours, too. You need to get used to it." Get used to it. I felt like a sausage stuffed into a casing. I was acutely aware of every part of this new body. I could feel the way my hips swayed when I shifted my weight, the slight jiggle in my chest, the way my longer hair tickled my bare back. It was a constant stream of alien sensory input. "Okay," she said, backing up to give me some space. "Let's start with something simple, a basic stretching routine. Touch your toes." I stared at her. "I can't touch my toes. Ellie, I'm not flexible." "You weren't," she corrected, "but this body is. It has my muscle memory, my flexibility. The potential is there. We just have to teach your brain how to access it. Now, try." Hesitantly, I bent at the waist. I expected to feel the familiar strain in my hamstrings, the tightness in my lower back, but it wasn't there. My body folded with an ease that was shocking. My palms didn't just touch the floor, they lay flat against it, my face pressing against my knees. There was no pain, only a smooth, satisfying stretch. I straightened up, my eyes wide with surprise. "See," Ellie grinned, "it's all in there. Let's try a split." The next hour was a series of revelations. Under Ellie's guidance, I made my new body do things I'd never dreamed possible. I could drop into a perfect split without a twinge of pain. I could bend backward until my hands touched the floor, my spine curving with an impossible grace. The body was a finely tuned instrument, and with Ellie conducting, my mind was slowly learning how to play it. But it was clumsy. While the body was capable, my brain was still catching up. I tried a simple cartwheel and ended up in a heap on the mat, my limbs tangled. I attempted a handstand and immediately toppled over. My coordination was off, my sense of balance completely skewed. "It's okay," Ellie said, never losing her patience. "This is the first day. Your mind is still trying to drive your old car. It needs to learn the new dashboard. We have time." I sat on the floor, breathing hard, my skin slick with a light sheen of sweat. The leotard felt like a second skin now, moving with me. I was still deeply uncomfortable with the intimacy of it, but the initial shock was being replaced by a grudging functionality. This was the required uniform for the task at hand. Looking up, I saw Ellie's face. The change in her was as dramatic as my own. The deep, weary sadness that had been etched into her features for months was gone. In its place was a vibrant, focused energy. Her eyes sparkled with purpose. She was coaching, she was training, she was back in her world. As I stumbled and fell, she didn't see her clumsy brother. She saw a challenge, a project. She saw hope. And in that moment, for the first time, a part of my own shame and fear receded. The absurdity, the violation of it all, was still there. But seeing my sister truly smile, hearing the genuine excitement in her voice as she corrected my posture or explained a technique, made it feel worth it. I was a boy in a girl's body, wearing an impossibly tight leotard. But I was also the person who had brought my sister back to life. The thought was a small, fragile shield against the storm of my own confusion. 2 months passed in a blur of motion and spandex. Our lives fell into a strange, secret rhythm. 3 or 4 nights a week, after our parents were asleep, I would go through the transformation. The process itself became routine. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a dull sense of resignation. And then, something more complicated. The 12 hours of the serum's effect became my second life. As soon as the transformation was complete, Ellie would have me in a leotard and we would work. We started in her room, but soon we were sneaking out to the 24-hour gym where she had a membership. We'd go in the dead of night, when the place was nearly empty. I'd walk in as Ellie, flash her ID, and no one would look twice. My wardrobe expanded. It wasn't just the one sapphire leotard anymore. Ellie had a whole collection. There were black ones for basic practice, a vibrant pink one she called her Power Leo, and sleek, long-sleeved ones for when the gym was cold. I learned the intimate ritual of dressing for practice. First, the sports bra, a garment whose engineering I was starting to grudgingly respect, then the leotard, followed by black spandex shorts or leggings, and soft, pliable gymnastic slippers that made my feet feel nimble and sensitive. The training was grueling. Ellie was a relentless coach. She pushed me, corrected every flawed angle, every imperfect line. We worked on strength, on balance, on grace. The disconnect between my mind and the body slowly began to mend. The cartwheels became fluid, the handstands became steady. I started to learn basic tumbles and turns. The body's innate muscle memory was a powerful thing, and my brain, with constant reinforcement, was finally catching on. More than the physical training, though, was the mental one. To make it work, to truly sell the performance, Ellie insisted I had to be her. "Stop walking like a boy," she'd snap. "Your shoulders are too stiff. Let your hips move. You're a gymnast, not a linebacker." She taught me how to carry myself, how to sit, how to stand, how to walk with a grace that felt utterly unnatural at first. She showed me how to tie the long, blonde hair into a tight, practical bun. The feeling of the elastic and pins against my scalp becoming a familiar part of the ritual. Some nights, she'd even apply light makeup to my face. "The judges look for presentation," she'd explain, her touch surprisingly gentle as she brushed a little powder on my nose or added a hint of mascara to my lashes. "You have to look the part completely." Each time I looked in the mirror during those late-night sessions, the image staring back became less and less jarring. At first, all I saw was a costume, A boy playing a bizarre role, but slowly, insidiously, that began to change. I'd catch a glimpse of my reflection in the gym's wall of mirrors, a slender, powerful girl executing a perfect split leap, and for a fraction of a second, I'd forget it was me. I'd feel a flicker of pride, of admiration for the girl in the mirror. My inner world was becoming a confusing, chaotic place. During the day, I was Sam. I went to school. I hung out with my friends. I played video games. I tried to act normal, but it was a strain. I felt disconnected, like I was living a lie, which, of course, I was. My friends would complain about homework, and all I could think about was whether I'd finally be able to nail my back handspring tonight. Then, at night, I would shed Sam like a snake sheds its skin. I would become Ellie, and in that form, I felt different. The constant self-consciousness was still there, but it was being overshadowed by other things. I felt a sense of power in the body's strength and agility. I felt a strange sort of beauty in its grace. Sometimes, during a particularly fluid routine, a feeling of exhilarating freedom would wash over me, a joy in the sheer physicality of movement that I had never experienced as a boy. The lines were blurring. Was I Sam pretending to be Ellie, or was I some third entity? A fusion of the two. I didn't know who I was anymore, and the confusion was terrifying. One night, the two worlds nearly collided. We were in Ellie's room, taking a break. I was in my Ellie form, wearing a simple black leotard and leggings, my hair in a messy ponytail. We were looking at a video of a Russian gymnast on Ellie's laptop when we heard the doorbell ring. Who could that be? Ellie frowned. My heart leaped into my throat. My friends, Mark and Jason. They said they might come over to play some games. I had completely forgotten. Panic seized me. My parents were out. If they came in, they would find me like this. "The bathroom go," Ellie hissed. I scrambled off the bed, my movements clumsy with fear, and darted into the adjoining bathroom, locking the door just as I heard the front door open and Mark's familiar voice call out, "Sam, you here? Man." I pressed my ear to the door, my breathing shallow. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. "Hey guys," I heard Ellie say from her room. "Sam's not here. I think he went to the store." Her voice was calm and steady. "Oh, hey, Ellie, we were just going to see if he wanted to hang," Mark said. "You doing okay?" "I'm fine," she replied coolly. I stood in the dark bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. A wide-eyed, terrified girl stared back at me. My chest rose and fell rapidly under the thin black fabric of the leotard. In that moment, the reality of my deception crashed down on me with its full weight. This wasn't a game. This was a dangerous, fragile secret. A house of cards that could be blown over by a single unexpected visitor. I heard my friends say their goodbyes and the front door close. A few moments later, a soft knock came on the bathroom door. "They're gone." I unlocked it and stepped out, my body trembling. Ellie looked at me, her expression serious. That was too close. "I know," I whispered, wrapping my arms around myself. The leotard suddenly felt thin and inadequate, offering no protection at all. I felt a desperate, overwhelming urge to be Sam again, to be back in my own body, in my own baggy clothes, safe and anonymous. Later that night, as the serum began to wear off and the familiar, uncomfortable sensations of the reversion began, a profound sense of relief washed over me. But as I stood in my own male form again, looking at my reflection, the relief was tainted with something else, a sense of loss. My body felt heavy, blocky, and graceless. I missed the lightness, the coiled potential of Ellie's form. I pushed the thought away, horrified at myself. But the seed had been planted. I was no longer just a reluctant participant. A part of me, a part I refused to acknowledge, was starting to enjoy being her. The day of the national qualifiers arrived with a cold, gray dawn that perfectly matched the knot of dread in my stomach. The past 3 months of clandestine training had all led to this. There was no more practice, no more room for error. Today, I had to walk into a stadium filled with thousands of people and convince every single one of them that I was Ellie. The transformation happened in the dim morning light of Ellie's bedroom. The process was so familiar now that I barely registered the physical sensations. One moment I was Sam, a nervous 16-year-old boy, and the next I was Ellie, a nervous 16-year-old girl. The real transformation, the one that mattered today, was the one that came after. Ellie had laid out the competition uniform on her bed. It was a masterpiece. The leotard was made of a fabric that shifted from a deep violet to a brilliant silver depending on the light. Intricate swirls of glittering crystals were scattered across the bodice and down the long sleeves. It was more than a uniform. It was a costume, designed to dazzle and impress. As I put it on, the cool, smooth fabric felt like armor. It was snugger than my practice leotards, designed for performance. Ellie worked on my hair, pulling it into a flawless, intricate bun at the crown of my head, securing it with a dozen pins and a liberal amount of hairspray until it was helmet tight. Not a single strand was out of place. Then came the makeup. It wasn't the light touch-up we used for practice. This was a full performance face. Foundation to even out my skin tone. A sweep of smoky eyeshadow to make my blue eyes pop under the harsh arena lights. Waterproof mascara. And a touch of shimmery lip gloss. When she was finished, Ellie wheeled back and held up a hand mirror. Look. I took the mirror with a trembling hand. The face that stared back was one of polished, athletic perfection. The makeup made my features look sharper, more dramatic. My eyes looked huge and fiercely determined. There was not a single trace of Sam left. Not in the perfectly arched eyebrows, not in the confident set of the jaw, not in the graceful line of the neck. I was looking at a champion. I was looking at a stranger. "You look ready," Ellie said, her voice tight with a mixture of pride and unbearable tension. "Our parents drove us to the arena. They thought they were taking their daughter to support her team from the sidelines." Ellie, in her wheelchair, wore a team jacket, a brave smile plastered on her face. I sat in the back, silent, my hands clenched in my lap, the rhinestones on my sleeves digging into my skin. I was a ghost hiding in plain sight. The backstage area was a chaotic swirl of noise, color, and nervous energy. Girls in sparkling leotards stretched and chattered, the air thick with the smell of chalk and hairspray. I felt like an imposter, a fraud who was about to be exposed at any moment. My teammates, girls Ellie had known for years, greeted me with hugs and words of encouragement. "You look great, Ellie. You're gonna kill it out there." I could only nod and offer a weak, shaky smile, my voice trapped in my throat. Ellie was my anchor. She stayed by my side, her presence in the wheelchair a constant, grounding force. She gave me last-minute instructions, her voice a low, urgent murmur in my ear. "Remember to breathe. Extend through your fingertips. Stick the landing. You've done this 1,000 times. You know this routine better than you know your own name." The irony of that statement almost made me laugh. I didn't even know my own name anymore. Then, it was time. The announcer's voice boomed through the stadium. "Next up on the floor exercise, from Northwood Gymnastics, please welcome Ellie Miller." A wave of nausea rolled through me. Ellie squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Go," she whispered. "This is it. This is for both of us." I walked out of the wings and onto the brightly lit competition floor. The sheer size of the arena hit me like a physical blow. Thousands of anonymous faces stared down at me from the stands. The vastness of the space, the intensity of the lights, the weight of all those expectations, it was paralyzing. For a terrifying second, I forgot everything. The routine, the music, my own name. I was just a boy in a sparkling leotard, about to be humiliated on a national stage. Then I found my parents in the crowd. They were sitting next to the real Ellie's wheelchair. My mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My dad was watching me with an expression of profound pride. They were looking at their daughter, their champion, back where she belonged. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. The fear didn't vanish, but it was joined by a surge of fierce determination. This wasn't about me. It wasn't about Sam. It was about them. It was about the girl in the wheelchair who had given me her trust. I took my starting position in the corner of the mat, my body poised, and a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't Sam anymore. I wasn't an imposter. I was Ellie Miller, and this was my floor. The first notes of the music filled the arena, and my body moved. The months of relentless training took over. My mind went blessedly blank, and I became a creature of pure instinct and muscle memory. The first tumbling pass was powerful and explosive. I flew through the air, my body twisting and turning with a precision that felt both foreign and completely natural. I landed perfectly, the soles of my slippers gripping the mat, and the crowd roared its approval. The sound fueled me. I moved through the choreography, each step, each leap, each turn flowing into the next, the graceful arm movements, the expressive turns, the moments of delicate balance. It was a story told by a body, and for 90 seconds, that body was mine to command. I felt the burn in my muscles, the pounding of my heart, but I also felt a strange, exhilarating joy. I wasn't just executing moves, I was performing. I smiled at the judges. I connected with the music. I let the energy of the crowd lift me higher. The final tumbling pass was the most difficult, a double pike. I sprinted across the mat, launched myself into the air, tucked my body into a tight ball, and flipped twice before straightening out for the landing. For a split second, suspended in the air under the bright lights, I felt an incredible sense of freedom, of power. Then my feet hit the mat. Thump! A perfect, stuck landing. I didn't take a single step. I held the final pose, arms raised in triumph, my chest heaving. The arena erupted. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, washing over me, vibrating through the floor. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated adoration. And I felt a happiness so sharp and clear it was almost painful. It wasn't just happiness for helping my sister. It was my own. In that moment, standing on that mat, I had never felt more alive, more powerful, or more seen. As I walked off the floor, my legs shaking from adrenaline, Ellie was waiting for me. Her face was a mess of tears and ecstatic pride. She threw her arms around my waist from her chair, hugging me tightly. "You did it," she sobbed. "You were perfect. You were me." I could only nod, my own eyes welling up. Later, in the quiet of the locker room, I stood in front of a mirror. The girl who stared back was flushed with victory, her eyes shining, her makeup slightly smudged. She was beautiful. She was strong. And for the first time, I didn't just see her as a disguise. I looked at her, at this body I was wearing, with a feeling I couldn't name. It was more than just relief or accomplishment. It was a strange, unsettling mix of longing and loss. The performance was over. Soon she would be gone. And I wasn't sure how I felt about that at all. The drive home was a blur of celebration. My parents were ecstatic, convinced they had just witnessed a miracle come back. They praised Ellie's courage, her resilience, her flawless performance. I sat in the back, the heavy gold medal hanging around my neck, a silent passenger in my own victory parade. I offered quiet, one-word answers, letting the real Ellie, glowing with pride from her wheelchair, do most of the talking. The moment we got home, I retreated to Ellie's room, the excuse being that she was exhausted. The high of the performance was fading, replaced by a profound and weary confusion. I peeled off the sparkling leotard for the last time, the fabric clinging to my skin like a painful memory. The reversion began a few hours later. The familiar, tingling ache spread through my body. But this time, it felt different. It didn't feel like a return to normalcy. It felt like a theft. I felt the subtle, strong curves of my hips and waist recede, replaced by the straighter lines of my male frame. The soft sensitivity of my chest vanished as my breasts dissolved into nothing. My shoulders broadened, my muscles thickened, and my hair retracted into its usual short, brown crop. The transformation was an erasure, a slow-motion vanishing act of the girl in the mirror. When it was over, I was Sam again. I stood in front of the mirror wearing only my boxers, and the reflection felt like a stranger. My own body, the body I had lived in for 16 years, felt heavy, clumsy, and alien. My skin felt rough, my movements felt blocky and uncoordinated. I ran a hand over my short hair and felt a phantom limb-like sensation for the weight of a long ponytail. I missed the effortless grace, the coiled energy, the simple lightness of being. A deep, hollow ache settled in my chest. It was the ache of something lost. Ellie wheeled into the room, her eyes soft. The medal I had won was now around her neck, gleaming against her team jacket. "How do you feel?" she asked gently. "Weird," I said, my own voice sounding rough and deep to my ears, like I'm wearing someone else's clothes. She nodded, a knowing look on her face. "You were amazing today, Sam. I don't have words. You gave me my dream back." "It was your dream," I said, unable to meet her gaze. "I was just the vehicle." "Was that all it was?" she asked, her voice perceptive. "When you were out there on that floor, You weren't just going through the motions. I saw you. You were alive. You loved it." Her words hit too close to home. I couldn't deny it. I had loved it. I had loved the power, the grace, the adoration. I had loved being her. The admission felt like a betrayal of my own identity, of everything I thought I was. I sank onto her bed, my head in my hands. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should be happy this is all over. I should be relieved to be me again, but I just feel empty. I feel like the interesting part of my life just ended. My confession hung in the air between us. It was a terrifying thing to say out loud. One part of my brain, the sensible Sam part, was screaming at me for being a freak. But the other part, the part that had tasted a different kind of existence, was drowning in a sea of confusing desires. I missed the soft feel of a leotard against my skin. I missed the satisfying ache of well-worked muscles. I missed the reflection of the pretty, powerful girl in the mirror. Ellie was quiet for a long time. She wheeled over to me, her expression unreadable. She had gotten what she wanted. Her legacy was secure. She had her victory. She could have easily told me to snap out of it, to go back to being her brother and forget this ever happened. But she didn't. She reached out and put her hand on my arm. "You sacrificed everything for me. Sam, your body, your identity. You lived as me for months. You can't expect to just switch that off and go back to the way things were. It changed you." I looked up at her, my eyes pleading for an answer I didn't have the words to ask for. "The competition is over," she said softly. "My dream is safe. This part is done. But that doesn't mean it has to be the end." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" She gestured to the locked case under her bed, where the remaining vials of the serum were stored. "Dad's research was stable. The effects are temporary. There's no harm in it. What you did out there today, it wasn't just for me. I think you found something for yourself, too." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "If you want, if you ever feel like you need to be her again, we can. Not for a competition, not for me, for you." The offer was a key, unlocking a door inside me that I hadn't even known existed. The possibility of it all, the transformation, the training, the feeling of being that other person not as a duty, but as a choice, my choice. I looked from my sister's earnest, compassionate face to my own reflection in the mirror, the plain, unremarkable boy I was supposed to be. And then I thought of the other reflection, the vibrant, graceful girl with the fire in her eyes. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. My life had been split into two distinct, incompatible halves, and I was standing on the fault line. All I knew was that the idea of never feeling that way again, never feeling that lightness, that power, that beauty was a thought I couldn't bear. I didn't give her an answer. I didn't have to. She could see it in my eyes. The impossible proposition was no longer a request from her to me. It had become a question I would have to ask myself, over and over again, in the quiet, lonely nights to come. My journey hadn't just ended. A new, far more complicated one was just beginning.